Hey guys, this is Leslie Freeman, and I have decided to focus on using Chalk Talk in my classroom. I wanted to kind of look at Chalk Talk and decide um, why it would be the best choice to use in my classroom. And the things that I wanted to focus on are what it's like, how it's different, and why kids will like it. So one thing that I think that it is like is a discussion that reflects on learning, but it's different because kids aren't put on the spot to respond. And I think they'll like that because it's quiet and they can write what they're thinking. Something else that's similar to is an exit ticket, but it doesn't feel as final or give the opportunity and it gives the opportunity for students to ask questions instead of only supply their answers. I think that kids will also like that because they can piggyback off of others' ideas and questions, thinking about those things and interpreting them in a different way. Something else that's similar to is a dipstick, but it's different because it's a little more authentic way to determine what kids can tell you about a given topic since it's so open-ended. And I think that kids will like that because it doesn't feel as threatening as an assessment given like a dipstick. How Chalk Talk is done is similar to this picture given here. There will be different posters around the room with a prompt or a question in the center, and students will be able to go ahead and write whatever they're thinking about in response to those prompts or questions. And after a given set of time, they're going to move to the next board, continuing to move after each time has passed until they've reached all of the boards, adding their observations or their responses to those prompts. The teacher is going to go ahead and help by signaling whenever students move to those next boards and also facilitating the reflection at the end. Here's an example of how I plan on using this in my classroom. Currently, we are starting the PLTW Module 1, which is all about force and motion in our classroom. PLTW stands for Project Lead the Way, and it is a science activity. So this one, all about force and motion, starts with an entry event. For this entry event, we use a car that's constructed out of something similar to Legos. And this car has these posts at the end of it, which we place an egg inside. We then use a ramp to do the first part of the experiment at a low grade. So we roll the car down and let it smash into the wall, and we kind of talk about what happened to the egg, and we look at the car and its design. And then for the second part of the experiment, we increase the grade of the ramp, going ahead and rolling the cart down the ramp, and again it smashes into the wall, and we go ahead and talk about what happened then. But instead of doing it this way, I would prefer to do the first part of the experiment and do a Chalk Talk about that, and then do the second part of the experiment and have a talk about that. So my boards for my Chalk Talk would be one with the first part of the experiment, one to give observations of the second part of the experiment, one to talk about the egg and what they noticed about it. Another would be about the car and any observations they had about its design or maybe some flaws in that design. The next one would be about safety and ways that they noticed that the egg was kept safe or was not kept safe. And the last one would be about real world application. So how could they apply what they saw in the experiment to things that happen in their real life? What I'm looking for here is them kind of describing cars and the safety devices inside cars that will keep them safe during accidents. If they go to amusement parks, the safety devices inside those rides that keep them safe, as well as airplanes or other modes of transportation that use safety devices. As the students work around, they're going to be placed in groups, and as they move from board to board, they'll have a set amount of time to be at each board. When the bell rings, they'll move to the next board until they've gone to all of the boards. And after that point, we would share and reflect. An idea I had was to turn the papers over and reassess our learning, kind of thinking about those things that we learned from the discussion after we had shared out. I wanted to go over some problems that teachers may see whenever they're using Chalk Talk, just because I like to look at the other side of it. One problem I noticed that might happen is students might not participate. However, if they're reading what's on these boards, they're still getting something out of this, even if they're not writing. One thing I thought that could increase involvement if teachers allow students to also sketch on there instead of just writing words. Another problem teachers might encounter is that they aren't giving a physical grade for this unless they create a rubric for responses and find a way to indicate each student's response, possibly writing their classroom number underneath their response. But then it loses that anonymous side of it, where students are going to feel less threatened by the fact that they're putting their information or their thoughts out there. Another problem that teachers might see with this is that they aren't actually sending work home. A solution to that would be taking photos of the Chalk Talk boards and attaching those to your newsletter so parents can see what you're doing in your classroom. And the last thing would be that students might just rephrase what another student has written, but even this I feel like could be a positive because those students are still taking in what other people have written and interpreting that in a different way. So hopefully after seeing how I'm going to use Chalk Talk, you can think about some ways that you would use Chalk Talk in your own classroom.